I think they're at a funeral or something, and there's this guy, and he's like, "Should I tell everyone I'm a pilot?"
That's about right.
Chandler Tower, Cherokee 4121 Tango, so Chandler Air Service. We have Zulu, and we'd like a south departure, please.
What does it take to be an angel? Where does the sun go when it sleeps? Is every star that shines so brightly in the sky another promise I must keep? I know I should by now. It isn't written in the stars, just shadows, dreams.
Welcome back, everybody, to Student Pilot Cast. We've got another feature episode here, a little different than audio in the cockpit. But I have the honor here to be with Nick Smith from Part-Time Pilot. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So for those people out there, just do a 1-minute introduction about what Part-Time Pilot is, and then I've got some questions for you that go a little more personal.
Okay, sounds good. 1 minute. All right. So my name's Nick Smith. Part-Time Pilot is basically online ground training. For right now, it's just private pilots. So we do online ground school and an online check ride prep program. Then we have a lot of bonus courses that kind of help pilots navigate their private pilot's license. That's pretty much what it is. And we'll probably get to this later, but we try to be different than the other online ground schools out there, and really sort of have a personal touch with the student pilots.
Awesome. Thanks. That was pretty good. You kept it under a minute. Yeah, we'll definitely get into more detail later. But I just wanted to ask you, what got you interested, what got Nick Smith interested in aviation?
So I can remember a few things that really happened in my childhood that really kind of drove me to aviation. One was watching the space shuttle launch in Cocoa Beach, Florida. That was like, okay, I want to be an astronaut. That's for sure. Right. When I was like, I don't know, 8 years old or something like that. Then I think I was like 12 or 10 or something. And I got to go into the cockpit, and I got my wings, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Even if I don't become astronaut, I could be a pilot. And then so growing up, I was big into sports, and basketball was like my main focus, and it took a lot of my brain power and energy. And I actually got a scholarship to play Division II basketball. So that's what I did after high school for a couple of years. But I saw, and this is the third thing that sort of drove me, and kind of the final thing that drove me to aviation, was I saw the movie Iron Man. And I was always like good at math and good at my studies, but when I was focusing all on basketball, I kind of felt like I was sort of wasting my future. Like I wasn't going to play in the NBA, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I was like, am I really, because basketball took all my time. I was just kind of sloughing it on my classes and stuff. So Iron Man, just the Tony Stark engineering new things in aviation and all that stuff just really made me be like, I want to do that. That sounds cool. That sounds like a great career. I'd be good at it. So I decided to transfer to the University of Washington, get my bachelor's in aerospace engineering, and then I went on to my master's at Georgia Tech in aerospace. And that basically, to answer your question, it was a combination of things all throughout my childhood. And then the movie Iron Man really sealed the deal for me.
I guess that's I guess that's aviation, right? I mean, he flies.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Nick, are you a pilot?
I am a pilot. I'm a private pilot.
Awesome. And how and where and when did you learn to fly? When did you get your certificate?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Seattle. So after Georgia Tech, I moved back to Seattle and worked for Boeing for a few years. And while I was at Boeing, I decided I wanted to get a private pilot, because I had this, like I said, I had those dreams as a kid to be a pilot, astronaut, all those things. So I got the job to pay the bills, to pay the pilot bills, and then I wanted to get my pilot's license. So I started in Seattle, and I actually soloed rather quickly, was progressing through it, and then hit kind of the winter months of Seattle with the low the low ceilings, right? And
Cold and wet. Yep.
yeah, and burned through that $5,000-6,000 that I had saved up, which was not enough. And so I started going paycheck to paycheck. And then at the same time, I was sort of getting sick of the desk job, and I was looking into flight test engineering roles, something that's more hands-on with the aircraft, right? Either flying in the aircraft or looking at data of the aircraft and changing things on the aircraft. So I started applying to those flight test engineering jobs, and I got one in San Diego. And so I decided to move during the middle of my flight training, which really derailed it. Basically had to start back all over in San Diego. And then, you know, got quickly back to where it was, but had some struggles again with weather in the summer, right? It was right when I needed my solo cross country flights, and they have us fly to the desert like Yuma and Palm Springs. And the problem is you're flying out of San Diego, and the marine layer, you can't get out until about 10 a.m.
Right.
But then you have to get to the desert by 11 a.m. before it's 110. So that was a real struggle. So I went through that. And then finally, after about 3 years and $22,000, I finally got my private pilot's license. Man. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. What airport were you flying out of in San Diego?
Gillespie Field.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So what got you thinking about ground training and doing it a different way?
Yeah. So I almost, 3 years, $22,000. I think I had 4 or 5 instructors. It was very taxing mentally on me. If it wasn't for, that I had a good job and a supportive wife, that I wanted to quit a lot. And I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking, like, if someone, I had a good feel for the aircraft. All my instructors said that. I got to soloing in under 10 hours. So it wasn't like, and then I had the background, the aerospace engineer, the flight test engineer. And I thought, like, if this was hard for me, like, it's no wonder that, like, I think AOPA says 80% of student pilots end up never becoming a private pilot. Now, I think that figure is a little bit old, so I don't know what it is now. But I really just had an epiphany that the flight training industry was sort of failing us, right? And there's a demand for pilots at the same time. Yep. So I kind of saw an opportunity, and it really just started with, I made like an ebook and an Instagram, just educating students on what not to do, basically my story of flight training. So that's how it started. And then I realized that all I really had to do was take a couple exams and become a ground instructor. And then I could build my own ground school and actually, monetize this. And at the same time, be that change in the industry that I thought it needed.
Excellent. We'll get to a little bit about some of what you see as your competitors. Excuse me, as your competitors. But what was it? What did you feel like was not being offered by the curriculum or the services that were already out there? I mean, you lived in San Diego, so you obviously know about the Kings, right? And there's some other offerings. We all know about Sporties and some others. What was it that you were bringing to the table, or that you wanted to bring to the table, that was a little bit different than what those more established players were doing?
Yeah, so I got nothing bad to say about those guys and my competitors. And Kings, like you said, they're the OG. They've been around forever, and they do a great job. They know their stuff. But the one thing that I saw that I think is our biggest separator is that personal touch mentorship type of thing. Yep. The holding your hand from the time you go into IACRA and get your student pilot certificate application sorted out, to, preparing for your check ride and then shaking the examiner's hand. And then we have future plans to go beyond that. but just that kind of guide, right? The Gandalf of the I'm a big Lord of the Rings nerd, but like just that guide through your private pilot license. So started with, educating students what not to do and avoiding unnecessary costs, because I really what I understood was that I was lucky enough to be able to pay $22,000 and make it work. But for most people, that's why 80% of student pilots
that would
stop,
be the end of the road, right?
Yeah. It gets to the point maybe at $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 where it's like this can't go on, right? So the biggest thing and the easiest thing that I could do is educate students before on what not to do to avoid those unnecessary costs, and really have a plan going into it, and then have that mentor where they say, okay, what do I do next, right? What's the best thing that I can do next? And here it is. And not to say that if you reached out to Kings or Sporties or anything, that they wouldn't have someone that could offer you that advice too. But that's really the forefront of our platform.
You've sort of built it into the program, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is definitely different, differentiator there. So I got to ask, is that where the part-time pilot name came from? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's I'm an engineer, so it has some logic to it, and just like the keywords of pilot and time, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like, Google searching how much time does it take to be a pilot, the mm-hmm. part-time pilot would show up for that. But also that, like, I realized most people, either they have a job, they have kids, they have a life at home, they're taking care of people, kids, whatever. Piloting is not, it's very rare, probably 20% or less of people that just can dedicate all their time or money to flight training, right? And this is my career. They do the ATP, and that's great, everything. But most of us, either it's a career change, so we're working to pay for our flight training, or it's going to be a hobby that we want to do outside of work. So we really are, at least at the beginning, during that training stage, we really are part-time pilots. So that's another focus of what we do is, and I just started a podcast where I go through our audio, it's basically, I'm calling it the audio ground school. So it's all our lessons in audio, and it's just making it more 21st century, kind of more consumable for people when they're driving to work, when they're on a walk, things like that. So that's kind of how part-time pilot came up, was realizing that most of us are starting off as a part-time pilot. We have other responsibilities and a place that can maybe cater more to those people and try and help them in their limited amount of time.
Yeah, that's cool. And of course, you don't have to convince me of the power of the audio platforms. I think it's really powerful. It has its own important niche outside of video. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
and I gotta say, I want to listen to more. I kind of got hooked on yours. I listened to the first 3 episodes of your podcast, and I love the idea. I wish I would have done it when I was going through my training. So I'm sure a lot of people have found that helpful, because when you're going through those struggles that I talked about, it's nice to know that other people are also kind of going through that stuff.
Absolutely. Yep. That was one of the important things I found. I didn't know that when I started the podcast, but it was one of the things I found is there are struggles. And the more I've talked to people I wasn't alone. And I thought, man, I got to make sure that people know that we all go through these struggles and these doubts. And, you get hung up on some aspect of flying, and it's sometimes different for everybody. But, getting the landing smooth, understanding round out and flare, you get hung up on something, if not multiple things during your primary training. And it's important for people to know that you can push through it, so I'm glad you've got that mentoring going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how many times I've had students, I've seen it on a Facebook group, whether it's ours or someone else, and they say, oh my gosh, I had a bad day, bad landings. I'm so embarrassed. Maybe I'm not cut out to do this. And exactly. I'm just like, everyone has those days.
That's right. That's right.
So
that's cool. All right. So now we get a chance to kind of dive into the program a little bit. So you gave the overview. We talked a little bit about the history and how you started. How what are all the different aspects? I mean, you've already mentioned a podcast. You've mentioned audio. You've mentioned some of your lessons and live things that you do, mentorship. What are all the aspects of part-time pilot that one of your students would have access to?
Yeah, so there's kind of the general like salesy things, like, and actually first let me say that when I decided to make an online ground school, what I did was, I looked at basically what I thought was like the top 5 online ground schools, and I listed out. Sorry, I got a little hiccup.
That's okay.
I listed out everything, that all the features that they had. And then because I had started with an Instagram, I started asking the people that were following me. I was making just informational posts and got some followers. And I started asking them, like, what were the most important things for your online ground school? What did you find the most useful? And I made a list, and I wanted to, because I hate like selling. So I wanted what I was selling to be just an easy choice, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to eventually have all the features that, that a student needs, and then be the best, and then still be one of the lowest prices, right? So it was just an easy sell. I didn't have to do the selling. So that's kind of what I came up with. One of the things one of the big things was lifetime access. There's some online ground schools that they just offer a year. And with so many people that I asked, they're like, well, every 2 years we got to review this info. It'd be nice if I didn't have to pay, a year, if I could just have this for my whole pilot career. So that was a no-brainer. Having a community and be able to get their questions answered. So I try to be super available, and we have that Facebook group community. So there's instructors, there's other students, and there's other pilots on there, so you can get a wide perspective. So there's that group community of learning that we have, and then also live lessons. So a combination of both, so that people who like the live lessons, and I started these about 3 months ago, and people really enjoy them, that they can get their questions answered, and I can show them things live. But then people who want that at their own pace type of thing, they'd be able to watch the recordings and then maybe just post, send me an email or post on the Facebook group and get their questions answered. So two different, I kind of realized, some people liked it one way, some people liked the other. So just having both of those. And then one big one was, a lot of people are big on just studying at their own pace. A lot of people say, okay, I want to be a pilot, but I want to see if I can learn the ground training stuff first. And so they kind of go at their own pace, which is great. I think that's a great way to do it, especially, if you're not pressed by time or anything like that. And so having the ability to sort of be mobile and study anywhere, have things you can download, print. So like we have a lot of bonus content that you can download and study offline. We actually had a guy who's in the Navy, and he used all our download content for 3 months when he was in a submarine to study and pass the exam. So that was a big thing for people. And then practice tests, that's one of the big things, like questions, practice questions. I try not to make that the focal point of my what I talk about, because I don't want students to get caught up in just memorizing practice tests and answers. But we do have that. We have flashcards and a bunch of practice tests, because again, that is very helpful tool to passing the exam. But I want them to learn the fundamentals behind it and not just memorize things. And then visual aids, so videos. And that's one thing that we're working on right now, is getting actually even better on our videos. Because if I'm being honest, the one thing that I lack that things like, my competitors have, is they have these really nice animated videos. Right. And when I was just starting out, I don't know if you took a look at any of my videos, but I did. They're pretty rudimentary. They're very informational, but so I've been working with an animator, and we're getting some of those animations, because that's a big thing for people, visual learners like I am myself. So those, and then, I don't want to derail your train of thought, but the thing I felt like when I was looking at your videos was that I was talking to my CFI. When you do your live
your live streams and things like that. You've got sort of whiteboard-esque type training. And so it kind of goes along with what you were trying to start, is that you wanted this to be personal, feel one-on-one. And that's kind of what it felt like. It didn't, my CFI never had any fancy, animations. Of course, that was back in 2008, but he didn't have any fancy animations or anything, but he would hold a model, or he would write on the whiteboard, or, something like that. And that's kind of the feel I got from your videos. I got the impression that's kind of what you were going for.
Yeah, exactly. And, I wanted, pretty much. I mean, most of it was just because I didn't know how to animate videos as well. If I was good at that, I probably would have done that. I think that is very
and those
helpful.
things
But
can be helpful. Like you said, for visual learners. I'm also kind of a visual learner, but I didn't feel like it was missing too much either. But it can always be helpful, especially for certain segments of your customers or your students, right? To have something nice like that. Yeah. So I made a ton of like visual diagrams that are still images and pictures for memory aids and stuff like that. So we do have plenty of visuals, but yeah, you're totally right in that it's very helpful. So that's something we're working on. So cool.
Yeah.
I think I kind of interrupted you. I think you might have had a couple more points to make about the different aspects.
No worries. Yeah, I just kind of wrote down a list so I wouldn't forget. One of the things is the FAA practice questions, like answer explanations. So when students get it wrong, they don't have to go find it again and try to figure it out on their own. It says, this is why it's wrong and stuff like that. That was a big thing that we added last year. And then I mentioned the podcast, and you get your endorsement automatically through our website so what we do is we have all the lessons. So we have a written lesson with videos and diagrams, and then we have a quiz. And then when you get through all the lessons, then we have you do 3 practice tests for score. And we want to see an 80%. If you get an 80% average or better, here's your endorsement. But one other thing that we do, and this is another differentiator that I made sure that I wanted to have in, and it goes back to me saying that I didn't want students to just memorize test questions and answers, because I found early on that students could just whiz through and do the quizzes and then get to the practice test, and they could still get above an 80%. And then they go to the real thing, and maybe the questions are a little bit different, which the FAA loves to do, or they'd get to their check ride and they'd struggle on their check ride. So what I did was we do custom reports where after I go through their 3 practice tests, and I also have them answer in their own words these like long written answers, so that I can see the gaps in their knowledge. So we have those on like the 6 main concepts, like fundamentals of flight, weight and balance, density, altitude, and performance, things like that, weather, and then kind of grasp of like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. So, and then I look at that and I look at their test scores, and between the questions they got wrong on the practice test and their answer explanations, I can kind of gauge where they're missing links. And so then after that, we kind of tell them, here's where I think you're lacking a little bit. Here's some additional stuff. Let me know. I want you to come up with a couple questions after reviewing this for me. And I kind of give them a dialogue that we go back and forth until that, and then I give them more practice tests. So we kind of work on those gaps, and we focus, the hyper focus on those gaps. And usually it's, just 1 or 2 gaps that boost their test grade by 10, 15%, right? So that's what we do. And we've actually never had a person fail the written exam so far. So fingers crossed. But I think that's the differentiator right there. It's because we put that extra effort in.
Yeah, and we're not talking about 12 students either. I mean, we're talking about several hundred, right?
Yeah, last I counted, it was 305. Yeah. And now, so I offer a money back guarantee where if they fail, they get their money back. So I would say 70% of the students, they email me and say, hey, I passed. But there is 30% that I never hear from again.
Oh, right.
I assume that they're passing or they would come back for their money, but there could be someone out there that didn't pass and they're just too embarrassed to tell me about it. But But
As
yeah.
far as you can tell, right? As far as you can tell,
Right.
everyone's passed. That's
Right.
that's amazing. And that sort of
Yeah.
reading through long answers to figure out where the gaps are, that is definitely not something that your competitors are doing. At least the competitors I know about.
Right. And, you know, I understand why they don't, because it kind of breaks that automated
That's right.
give them
doesn't
the content,
scale.
and then
That's
I
right.
don't have to do anything, right?
Yep.
So it is extra work on my part, but hey, that I wanted to be the difference in the industry, so that's what I got to do.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that does lead to the question, where you're heading in the future and so on. How do you scale something like that to be thousands instead of hundreds? Do you do the same thing? Do you bring on extra help? Like how do you scale this going forward?
Yeah, so the only way I see scaling that and still keeping that personal touch is getting some help, right?
Right.
And so that's my next immediate goal. I have been working with an awesome CFI. Shout out to Sarah if she's listening to this. But that's just been kind of on like, hey, I need this to be done, kind of a case by case basis. It's not anything permanent, but I hope to get to a success level where I can have her or someone permanently on, and then they could take over. And she has started to do some of those reports as a trial basis. So that's kind of the direction we're heading, so that so that we can scale that, right?
Yep.
And I can kind of work on the future plans, which are things like doing IFR,
Right.
commercial, and going that full route for those that do want to go further and make it a career or just get their IFR.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was obviously going to be one of my questions. Is that part of the scaling plan is to go to other ratings and certificates and so on? I can't wait for your tail dragger course. No, I'm just kidding. I was just thinking.
Yeah, there's so many things that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. I need to do this. So,
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I do someday want an airplane on floats, so maybe you can help me out with that too. Or no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super cool. So it's really that personal touch. It's the understanding of the gaps, not just tracking which questions you're not getting right, because everybody kind of does that in an automated way and kind of points you back to where where you may need a little extra help. But in this case, you're asking for them to explain or describe a concept in a way where, as a human, you're able to help them figure out, hey, you may not fully understand this. Let's dive into this a little bit. I think that's really, really cool and definitely different.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's like what you said. It's kind of like you're with your flight instructor, right?
Exactly.
You're in a ground session. Yeah.
Exactly. So what else what else do you have on the docket for part-time pilot? What else are you thinking about for future plans, expansion, and so on beyond additional ratings and more students?
Yeah. So our kind of mission statement, right, is to break the mold of the flight training. I said that I had an epiphany that flight training was failing students and there's a need. So what are the big obstacles that are failing? And the number one is, I'm sure you can guess, is money, right?
Yeah.
So, and I feel like most people, they just say it is what it is. It's expensive. You just got to have the money. But I want to tackle that. So far, the only way we've been able to do that is by educating what not to do, have a plan, financial plans, some scholarships. We actually give a $1,000 scholarship about every 3 months to our students. But mostly it's about finding it. It's avoiding those unnecessary costs. And then on top of that is having a good ground school so that they get one ground school, they pass their exams on the first try and they don't have to repeat them. And the number one unnecessary cost is redoing things in flight training, redoing lessons, redoing tests, things like that. So that's what we can do now. In the future, like I said, we have the $1,000 scholarships. I'd like to give one of those out every month. That's my immediate goal in the next year or two. Give more of those out to directly help with that money problem. And that's tied into our success. The more money we make, the more we can do that. And then the other thing I have is I have a really cool idea with helping those students that want to move on to IFR and then build hours for a commercial. And usually that path, if it's not an accelerated program, it's becoming a CFI and building hours training students, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I came up with this thing. It's kind of been in a beta, but it's an affiliate program that I'm going to call like a profit sharing thing, where there's so my competitors, they have affiliate programs like Sporties, that you get like $25 off on their website, their shop. And then Kings is pretty good. I think you get like $45 for every student you sign up. So I wanted mine to be obviously well beyond theirs, but also focus on helping those people earn money for building their hours. So we completely share the profit. So if they get a student that uses their link to sign up, they get half the sale. Like they do half the work. And then, so what that does is I take over their ground training, right? So they don't have to really worry about the students' ground training. They get, $100, $125 when their student signs up for our course. And during the time, and I'm kind of going through these numbers right now, but during the time that they're building hours training students, they might have 10 students. That's 10 to 20 students. That's $1,000 to $2,000 that they can earn by just having them go to part-time pilot. And then on top of that, if I can teach them a few ways to help out in Facebook groups and communities, where if they get an additional 10 during that time, like 10 or 20 during that time, they can make $4,000 to $5,000 towards their flight training. So that's kind of one of the things I'm working on now, kind of educating and building that platform so that we can help do that profit sharing thing for those students, or students that want to make it a career.
Yeah, that's cool. Very creative.
Yeah.
Partnerships are usually key for things like this, so it's a great way to go about it. So explain to my audience here how somebody would become a student in your part-time pilot program. Yeah,
so you can find me on Instagram. It's at part.time.pilot. Part-time pilot was taken, so you have to have the periods in there. And you can just message me on Instagram, or I have a youtube.com/part-time pilot. Leave me a comment. Or the easiest way is obviously just go to the website, parttimepilot.com. And then right up top, there's online ground school. But I will give a trick, is that people who subscribe to my free content, I give them a few days to get $50 off. So if they want to get even a deal, because sort of a way to kind of encourage action right now, I just started like a 5-day challenge that was really popular on New Year's, like everyone with their New Year's resolutions, like to become a pilot. And so I wanted to do that again. So basically in 5 days, we tell them step by step how to go through IACRA, how to get, their student pilot certificate, how to meet a recommending instructor and get that solidified, how to prepare so you don't have any surprises during your medical exam and schedule your medical exam. So we do all that in 5 days. And then for the ones that make it all the way through, just sort of as like, hey, great job. Like, you're serious about this. So here's $50 off, because, I want people who want to be in our course anyways and who are serious about it. So that's a little trick. And I could provide that link for your audience if you guys want it, so that they could get that offer. That
would be great. Yeah. And I'll send it out in the show notes, as well as in the lower thirds of the video. That would be excellent. One thing I didn't ask, $50 off of what? I don't think I even asked how much the program costs.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So, so the online ground school is $200 for lifetime access, and then that full money back guarantee if you don't pass. I'm also like, I don't really want to broadcast this ton, but I'm super lenient with refunds, because I hate companies that like don't allow you to get a refund. So I've never not given someone a refund. So if you want to come in and try it out, but it's $200, which is still on the low end for our competitors that have that lifetime access. I think it's
that's like 2 or 3 hours of an instructor, a CFI doing ground. I I mean, that is completely reasonable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then you get $50 off, so that makes it $150 for life. So it's kind of, like I said, I don't like to sell, so I just want to make it easy for people. But what I did learn is that I used to have it like $100, and when I raised my price, more people bought, because I think people in their mind, they think, oh, there's a reason
There's more
this is
value.
cheaper.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so there must not be as much value as Kings. So I got to keep it close to everything, but yeah.
Right. But you get that personal touch. And I think you do a lot on the Facebook group too, as far as the personal touch, right?
Yeah. I try. I would like some more action in there. I'm always trying to. People will email me or message me on Instagram, and I'm like, post this in the Facebook group so everyone can see it. You know,
right.
But yeah, because I think there's some studies out there with like group and classroom learning where students. It was something like when another student asks a question and that student hears the answer, like, because it's a different perspective, but it might be the same kind of question that they had. They learn something from the way the student asked the question, and then they learn something from the answer. So it's like one of the best ways to learn is when you kind of have other people
group
asking
learning like that.
Kind of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, agreed. You could always kind of add that in your website, right? It's just not something you want to focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. So I have a learning management system, and if I upgraded it, that's one of the things that I could get. So it's probably going to be in our future for sure.
Okay.
Just because there are some people that don't have Facebook, and like the only reason I'm on Facebook is for our Facebook group. So,
exactly.
So
especially people younger than you probably aren't even on there in a lot place. Cool.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It just, you can't do what your parents did.
Yeah. All their parents are on there, so they don't want to be on there.
Exactly. So this is really cool. I've really enjoyed talking to you about this. I've learned a lot. I purposefully, I think you remember, I purposefully didn't ask a whole bunch of questions I wanted to ask when we first started talking, because I wanted to do it here where we could all learn as a group. And so I've really enjoyed this. I've learned a lot. Sounds like an awesome program. I love the personal touch aspects. It's definitely different. What have I not asked, Nick, that I probably should have asked? Anything else you wanna add in?
Man. I mean, oh man, have I seen Top Gun Maverick? No.
Well, I mean, who hasn't really?
Right? How good was that movie? That movie.
Oh man.
I'm using like when you sign up for our 5-day challenge, you know how they give you that example email? So I have maverick@topgun.com as like the example email.
Yeah, I did not have high expectations of that movie either. And I was blown away. I loved the original one, and I thought, it'll probably be pretty good. But I'm with you, man. That was way beyond my expectations. It was excellent movie.
Yeah, I've seen it twice, and I'm like stoked to see it again. So it was great. But I honestly can't think of anything else. You did a great job. And again, I really love your podcast and what the idea was, and I hope you keep doing it. I'm definitely going to keep listening because like I said, I was kind of hooked, and I think I could learn some things that I can tell my students.
Yep.
To do that.
I'll definitely keep doing it. And in fact, I haven't even announced this yet, but I may be doing the instrument rating here pretty soon, and we'll definitely keep going there. But I had the idea long ago. You're going to like this. I can tell you like this movie too, just from talking to you. But I had the idea of a Dread Pilot Roberts. So letting other people take over when they're doing their primary training and adding to the episodes as well, because I think there is something special about that in-cockpit experience that is sort of a mystery for a lot of people when they want to get into flight training, or even when they're in flight training. They'd love to hear how another CFI says something, or they'd love to hear the problems that I was having or somebody else is having, and you get that in cockpit audio. And people love the interaction with ATC as well. I've heard a lot of feedback from from listeners that it's a real learning tool to listen to a full flight and all of the communications that need to happen during the flight. So for all of those reasons, again, I go back to, audio is a really important medium, I think, for learning. Even when you take the visuals away, I think there's something extra with the audio. So yeah, so I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of diverse content as well as the features like this that I like doing when I visit Oshkosh, and hopefully Sun and Fun maybe next year, and get a lot of really cool interviews and discussions with people all over the industry. I want to keep that in there too. It's super fun, and definitely want to keep it going.
Yeah, and hey, maybe because I definitely want to, once I get through all the lessons on my podcast, I want to have guests. So maybe next year at Oshkosh, you can be on part-time.
Oh, you got it, man. You got it. Be happy to. Well, Nick, thanks again. Super fun, really great product, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No,